are verifying right now, but looking at
Olu Bankole, you always have to say Olu.
Okay, let's say that fully. Welcome, Mr. Olu Bankole Wellington, for joining us on this platform. But looking at the way Nigeria has been in the past, let me say 1 month, sorry. When you, in retrospect, how does it make you feel as a Nigerian youth, as a social crusader, as a politician, as a musician who started from nothing? How does it make you feel?
How does it make me feel? Well, it's a little strange because on the one hand, I feel quite frustrated because of the place that we're still at, and despite everybody's best efforts, everybody can see what's happening with the PR stories that are being spun, and it feels like the government, or certain people in the government, are more interested in expending their efforts to silence our voices than to do what our voices are requesting. So it feels like whether it's them attacking social media or claiming something that is fake news, but it's really not, with the whole story about what happened at Lekki. First the army said it was complete fake news, and then this, the governor said, oh, it was forces out of our control. And then the army changes their mouth a short while later and says, oh, well, okay, we were there, but it was at the request of the governor. And then they say, oh, I think it's the attorney general that now said, oh, well, it might have been people in hoodlums wearing military. So it just, they're going through all of this efforts to silence our voices and to change the narrative of what is going on out there. So it's frustrating, and it's draining, it's tiring, it's exhausting. But on the other hand, it's inspiring that we're here as a country. It's inspiring to see young people wake up and speak up against injustice and stand against oppression, and be united in our pain, but also united in our efforts all around the country to say, hey, we don't want police brutality anymore. We don't want bad governance anymore. And just seeing young people stand up, and this from the standpoint of somebody who has been involved in a lot of protests really over the years, and a lot of trying to get young people to stand together and to do things together and to push back together. Whether it's from Enough is Enough or Light Up Nigeria or Bring Back Our Girls, of the many things that we've tried to do over the years, this seemed to be the time that all of us are finally waking up to the powers that we have and the responsibilities that we have as citizens to demand a better country. So I think on the one hand, it's frustrating, but on the other hand, it's incredibly inspiring to see so many people standing and realizing that we may be in different locations, but we're all on the same side, and that's the side of wanting a better Nigeria. So
exactly, yeah, because sorry, I'm with you. I'm listening to you, sorry.
No, go ahead. I said so. It feels good and bad. It's two opposing feelings at once.
Like you just mentioned now, you've been a part of a lot of protests, but this EndSARS protest is different.
Mm-hmm.
From your view, what made this unique? Did you know this would have blown up to the proportion at which it did? And looking at it now, was there something the protesters should have done better, or should have done, or shouldn't have done? From someone that has been through, like you said, enough is enough. I mean, Occupy Nigeria and the likes. What makes this protest different? What is the strength and what was the weakness of this protest?
So I would say that the strength of the protest and what made it so effective was the decentralized and organic nature of things. Genuinely speaking, it was decentralized, it was authentic, it was organic. Different pockets of protesters all over the country were all saying the same thing, and it was amazing how we could all, being united in that pain and frustration, get behind something as simple but clearly defined as the 5-for-5, right? Which was something that most protesters around the country and even the young people outside of our shores who were protesting in other parts of the world were united in saying, hey, this is a good place to start in the things that we want to see. And I think that's what made it so powerful and so effective, because the government kept, or certain people in the government kept scrambling, looking for who to talk to say, oh yeah, stop the protest, but you couldn't stop it because there were so many different protesters and there was not one person that you could put pressure on and say, well, if I put pressure on this person, then it'll all stop. And what we've seen is that from trying to plead to stop the protest to using, underhanded tactics. I mean, people's accounts were being illegally frozen. And we just saw recently Mo, the lawyer, who was at the airport.
Yes.
So you can see that they are going through every measure. And again, of course, as is the way, nobody's being held accountable. So they say, okay, so who gave the order for the military to show up? Nobody knows. Who gave the order for her passport to be seized? Oh, nobody knows. The Ministry of Interior says, oh, it's not us. This one says it's not us. But these things are happening. So I think that's been the strength of the protest, really, is just, everybody being involved in it at the same time in their own way, in their own strength. And I think that that's a very powerful place for the generation to be when everybody realizes that, hey, I'm part of the solution, right? So I have to play my part in this story. So whether that was the people who were frontline, at the protests, the peaceful protests, and let's not mistake peaceful protesters with looters because they're completely different things. But whether it was people who were peacefully protesting, some of us were sending food to help people out. Some of us were sending ambulances and legal help because protesters were being arrested all around the country and being framed for crimes that they didn't commit. The police would shoot to disperse crowds and people would end up getting killed. And then they would go and arrest a protester who was just peacefully protesting and saying, oh, he committed murder. And these are things that we saw. And I'm not making anything up. So that's what made the protest so powerful. Now, in terms of what the protesters could have done differently, I get a little frustrated when that question is posed, because I think the peaceful protesters did almost everything right. The group that should have done things differently was the government. So instead of spending all of that time trying to get people to stop protesting, why didn't you just go ahead and do what people were asking you to do? Until date, we're still saying that 5-for-5 is still there. During this same protest, Belumi, who was a reporter for Boa TV, covered what was going on. We all saw the video where a politician comes out of his car with a gun and is shooting into the air. Now, reports have it allegedly that people have died from that singular act, and we've all seen the video. Now, somehow, Belumi gets arrested by some task force, some security agency task force, and turns up dead in a mortuary. And yet here we are still saying, so how does he go from being arrested to to ending up dead? And the person who he filmed, who was actually the person that should be arrested, who was the person committing crimes, is still a free man and is still walking free and has not been brought to justice. So, and who killed him while, under the care or under the forget the word, I'm a little tired today. Well, while I was in the custody, of the security agency, how did he die? What happened? So this is what we're saying is like, it's, and this is the thing, and this has always been the plea to government from the beginning of this protest till now. You have to go beyond just saying, oh, we'll do it. Oh yes, there's a press release or there's a report or there's an announcement. Just do the actions and be transparent in the actions. I tweeted, we saw a video in Oyo State that a soldier was flogging a young lady because he felt like her dress was indecent. In the same thread, they are using a scissors to shave a young man's head because they thought his haircut was not right. And this is what we're protesting against. This is what we're saying. When a security agency can decide that they don't like your haircut and they can take a blade or a scissors and shave you on the street. Like, when did that become the military's responsibility, judging which hairstyle is right or not right, and flogging and assaulting women, innocent women on the street? And then, of course, what happens next? They immediately say, oh, the soldier has been apprehended. That doesn't mean anything to young people. We saw the video, so why don't you show us the video of the person being apprehended? Why don't you show us these people being brought to justice so that we can use that as a deterrent from other people in the security agency to say, hey, if you break the law as a military man or a police officer or SARS or whatever your position is, this video shows you what, but instead they'll say, oh, the officers have been brought to justice. Oh, these are the names of the officers being arrested. But when we're seeing the crimes, it's not a press release. It's not an announcement. We're actually seeing these crimes being committed. So why can't we see the evidence of justice being served? And that request has been so clear and so simple that it's you start to wonder, why is it so difficult for them to just do this? And then you can't help but wonder that, hey, maybe they don't want to. Maybe our government feels like the purpose of our police force or our security agencies is to silence us and is to keep us from speaking against them. And it's quite disappointing because quite a few people who are in government now or in the corridors of power were themselves the ones protesting 30 years ago. They were the ones fighting and running from military dictatorship and screaming and crying out about freedom of the press. And here we are in a democracy, and we're having the same problems where a journalist, Pelumi, is getting arrested and killed, and a Rise TV reporter is getting assaulted by the security officers and by security officers. And we're seeing so many of these stories of, the journalists being clamped down on and the government saying, oh, the same social media that they used to campaign and to get into power is now what they want to shut down via the social media bill. And it's sad, really. It's sad because, a lot of people in our generation did believe the people in power, and only to see those people turn on them, so to speak, and a lot of people in our generation drew inspiration from people in power. I mean, you don't have to think too far back to remember June 12th and everything that happened after that, and with Abiola dying, and the people protesting and rioting, and the security agencies of the country coming out, and the young men and women who were beaten or killed and who had to flee the country and all of that. And that's not that long ago. So how is it that we now end up here again by some of the same people who were instrumental in that fight now not being able to stand with us and stand for us? And back to your question, to bring this to a close, I don't know that it's needed to be the young people the peaceful protesters doing anything different. I think the government could have done something different. I think the president could have released a different speech, and a speech could have had some empathy that says, hey, as a father to the nation, I understand the pain that young people are going through. I sympathize with them. I acknowledge that we've lost young people in this fight, and no Nigerian life is worth is worth losing. And justice will be done for people who've been killed, and corrupt police officers and military officers need to know that it's a new day and that it's not business. He could have just stood on behalf of his young people. He could have just had some empathy, and they could have handled things differently. Even if you wanted to shut down the Lekki protest after so long, I don't think sending the military in there to open fire on peaceful protesters was a good move. I think it was a bad move. And, you know, the Lekki massacre was terrible, okay? But we saw videos of extrajudicial killings going on all over the country. It happened in Mushi, it happened in different parts of the country. So it's not just about the people who were in Lekki, it's about the young people of Nigeria, you know? And I feel like at certain points in this entire story, the government could have done things differently, you know, and it's disappointing that they didn't. It really is disappointing.
And like you said, 30, 40, 5 decades ago, some of the people in government now were the ones agitating for a democratic state.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're also somebody that has tried to go into government, and with some of your speeches, you still want to be in government to make a change. Why do you think that such people that are agitated with so much strength, with putting their sweat and their blood on the line, now get into a position of power and then flip? Why do you think that does happen?
You know, that's a very interesting question. I think that there's something to be said for the foundation of who a person is, right? And you know who you are at your core, and the values that you stand for, and you know your moral compass that shapes who you are, and also who you hold yourself accountable to. Okay, so you know we've seen this in Africa, not just Nigeria, you know, all across the continent of Africa, where the people who start out good and start out, you know, standing for what is right, eventually become the corruption and the decay that they are trying to go in there to fix. And I don't know that there's an easy answer to that question. I know that I believe that because of my moral compass and because of the God that I serve and the young people that I work with and that I represent and that I'm fighting with and fighting for, I believe that if I ever did cross into government, I would be accountable to the people that got me there. And that's why I think that it's important for young people and for all people really to get involved in the political conversation, because it becomes a lot harder to hold somebody accountable who you didn't, as a generation, play a part in him getting there. So when young people sit out elections and we look at the voter turnout numbers every election, and they're dismal, they're terrible when it comes to young representation on the voting lines. But then when it comes to the complaining, you know, after all is said and done, you'll see us there. You'll see us heavily on Twitter, you'll see us on social media, you'll see us in our conferences and in our talks and all of that. But I strongly believe that we got to get in from the start. You know, we have to register to vote. We have to play a part in the political process. You know, Plato, I think it's Plato that said the punishment for not getting involved in politics is that you will be ruled by your inferiors. And so for Nigeria, the punishment for us not getting involved in politics is that we end up being ruled by people who we may not have hired as an intern in our businesses, people who we may not have given jobs to in our small companies and small businesses. I know what we go through at Suya Bistro before we hire, you know, an assistant manager or a manager or even just a bistro chef. I know what we go through at EME before we hire an agency executive. And it feels like we have stronger standards in our businesses and in our homes than we do in our country. So when it comes to our own personal businesses and our homes and our families, we have strict standards of the level of excellence that we'll require and the level of character and competency and capability that we will require. But then all of a sudden, when it comes to Nigeria, which the policies that Nigeria implements and enforces are what will dictate how our families are able to survive and thrive, how our businesses are able to function. But when it comes to that, we don't get involved, right? So invariably, the people that do get in there end up holding themselves accountable to the people that gave them those offices. So to the godfathers or to whatever status quo that got them into power. So the answer to those people are not to us. And so I think the solution to it is let's all get involved. Let's all register to vote at a bare minimum. Then we can even take it a step further. We can say we're joining a party, an existing one, or we're forming a new kind of young people's movement or whatever. And that way, as en masse, as if, as a nationwide force of like minds, we will embrace this democratic process that we have as a country. And we will outsmart it. We will decide who we want to represent us from the, I know that people get so obsessed with the presidential fight, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't care. We should definitely care about that, but we should put just as much energy into our local government chairmen and into our state houses of assembly and into our House of Reps and into our Senate. Because those are, levels, very powerful positions in government that it takes a lot less to win. I ran for a seat that was won with 23,000 votes in Etiosa. As enlightened a place as Etiosa is, and with all the young people that, if you want to do conference today, it's Etiosa that will fill the place, But then when it comes time to show up, not enough of us are there. So we're not bringing our own seats to the table. I always say we want a seat at the table, but we must bring our own chair. And the way that we do that is by registering to vote and participating in the political process. So if we begin to do that, then we should conceivably have a new crop of leaders who hold themselves accountable to the people that got them into office. And I think that's the general solution to it.
Because why I actually asked that question is because of the fact that not recently a Lagos lawmaker, your colleague in the entertainment industry, trended for some of his utterances. That's Desmond Elliott.
Yes.
In Lagos State House of Assembly. Then we also see a situation where a female lawmaker as well is, by her constituents, is being recalled. They are trying to recall her. You understand? Mm-hmm. Based on an utterance which it was stated that she said Nigerian youths are always high. You understand? Now you're saying youths should go in, and because I asked you this, now we have youths in government now. Youths are also trying to go into government. So that's why I asked the question: why do you think someone like Desmond Elliott, for example, who campaigned, especially with social media, this APC campaign, especially with social media, they're trying to regulate the social media and the likes. Now, what do you want the youth to think?
What do I want the youth to think?
Yes, with everything that is happening now, because the EndSARS protest has actually opened a lot of people's eyes. Before it was.
So what do I want the youth to think going forward?
With everything, yes, going further now, we have some youths in Lagos State House of Assembly, for example, saying these things with social media, knowing fully well that social media is one way that, a lot of youths actually put food on their table and disseminate information. You understand? They are trying to clamp it down and the like. So now you're saying youth should go into politics and the likes. And youths are saying we have some few people in politics now that we thought we trusted, but this and this is happening.
Okay.
Now you're a youth that is also trying to go into politics and the likes. Sorry about that. So what do you want them to think? Because now it's just like it's a contradictory conversation or discourse.
Okay. So I'll say this. I'll say, first of all, I think that any young person that has not at least even started to feel inspired or, catch the hint that as a generation, we're incredibly powerful. I think the one thing that you can take away from this last 1 month, this month of October that just passed, is that this generation of young Nigerians should start to wake up to the fact that the people in power are scared about the fact that power belongs to the people. And that's what this month showed. Now, we need to channel that power, and that's what we're discussing here today, about channeling that power in the right way. So what does that mean? You brought up the example of the Lagos lawmaker in Amo Odofin. and how they're trying to recall her.
Recall, yes.
Now, the recall process it's almost rigged to fail because I'll explain it very quickly. So that woman got into office with, I think she won her election with 7,400 or so votes. But to recall her, you need 50% plus one of all the registered voters in her constituency. So to get into power, she only needed 7,000 plus votes. But to recall her, you now need signatures from almost 20,000 people that are registered in her constituency, and you must verify those signatures. You can't make a mistake and all of that. So the recall process was set up to be incredibly difficult. However, I think that it sends a very powerful signal that young people in that constituency are willing to go through the work to begin the process of recalling her, because politicians need to be afraid for their jobs. They need to be going into those places knowing that, man, if I don't say the right things or do the right things, if I talk anyhow or do anyhow, these young people will recall me. And so I think it's an incredibly powerful thing. I mean, I'm not from that constituency, so I'm hopeful that that they achieve some measure of success with this. But we'll see where it plays out. But just the fact that they've set that ball into motion gives me a lot of encouragement. And every young person should take encouragement from that to say, Omo, if I'm upset with my rep or my senator, I don't have to sit down and wait till the next election. No. I can begin that process now. And just the same way that the protests, the EndSARS peaceful protest started and became this massive movement, there can be a massive movement to recall legislators all around the country. So there's that. Then going forward, there's organizing ourselves now towards 2023. So we did this We Move conference the other day. And when we said we wanted to have an open discussion about where do we go from here? Let's start exchanging ideas and all of that. And when we set about doing it, I registered the Zoom. We're like, okay, we'll do 1,000 people on Zoom. So we paid and we planned for it. But by the time we only opened, by the time we set everything in place, booked all the speakers, some people we couldn't get, they were unavailable. By the time we set everything up and were ready to open registration, it was pretty much like the day or so before. Bro, in the first few minutes of not even announcing, we just even sent it to certain WhatsApp groups. The 1,000-person limit on Zoom had been dusted. We went and upgraded it to a 3,000-person conversation on Zoom. Let me tell you the final number of people that registered for that Zoom. 22,000 registered for our Zoom. Now, you could only take 3,000 people, and YouTube took 5,000 plus. So there were 8,000 people tuned in online on this conversation to say, as a people, where do we go? And some TV stations covered it as well. So you can see that there's a mood, right? There's an energy, there's a shift in the mindset. The generation is waking up now. And I feel like somebody like myself who kind of spent many years trying to make noise and bang against the system and say, young people, we got to write. So it's almost like the seeds that we've been planting in times past we're starting to see those trees grow now. And so I think it is an amazing time because now we can take a look towards 2023 and say, you know what, let's target 40, 50 seats in the House of Reps. And we'll look at where we'll poll ourselves, we'll see where we have strengths in which states across the country. And we'll begin the effort now to sensitize the communities, to engage the grassroots, but also to help the grassroots because a lot of them do have their voters' cards, but a lot of them face the kind of hunger and poverty and that you cannot imagine. So we need to be, we've been doing this in Lekki Food Bank now, not for politics, but just because there's so much need in the country. And you realize that there's an entire, right next to every affluent neighborhood, there are thousands of people who don't have 3 square meals a day and are living under the worst conditions that your mind can conceive. So we need to begin to engage and to educate ourselves and to speak with ourselves and to collaborate with ourselves and to help ourselves and to plan to say, hey, come 2023, can we target 10 senators? Can we target 40 or 50 seats in the House of Reps? Can we target seats in specific states' House of Assemblies? So that in 2023, we can infiltrate government with like minds, with people who genuinely want better. You know, there's so many things wrong with the way our government is set up and the way that they function. We spend the majority of our budget on maintaining the government. You know, the National Assembly, there's too much money that's getting sunk into that place. You know, why can't we consider having legislators that are part-time? Why must you be a career politician? Why can't you run your business and come and do your duty for, you know, an honorarium or some sort, but go back and run your business? You shouldn't be able to get rich off of politics. And I think we need to really start looking at those things. Why do we spend 23 times what the UK spends on maintaining the lifestyles of past governors and presidents in this country, when clearly your retirement plan is based on how good of a job you do, and the country being in the state that it's in shows that our past presidents and governors didn't do that good of a job for them to be, you know, amassing this much wealth and luxury and lifestyle just because they want, you know, serve their country. So we need to start looking at all of these things. We need to look at electoral reform from now and say, hey, why can't people in the diaspora vote at their embassies? Why can't we have electronic collation of votes? Why, you know, we need to start putting certain things in place that give us a chance to do things right, do things better, to change the narrative, to right the ship going forward. And I think that that's the opportunity that we have now. If we sustain this energy, keep the conversation going, channel this frustration and this anger and this disappointment into saying, let's target this thing as a generation. Let's go after it together. We did it with EndSARS. We look how effective we were in 2 weeks, bro. There were young people, and shout out to like the Feminist Coalition and co, who gave more help to their country in 2 weeks of protest support and logistic support than politicians who had all year to help people. Look at the sheer amount of palliatives that is being discovered in warehouses around the country at a time when people don't have food. At a time when, and then you're hearing politicians say things like, I wanted to release it on my birthday. Or you see palliatives that COVID paid for, given to the leaders elected by people, and they are putting their face on it. Is it your personal property? And so, you know, we've got to demand better, man. And it starts with each of us having a commitment to be involved in the process, to register to vote. I saw the news this morning. We were filming a TV show, but I saw the news this morning that INEC says their voter registration. I believe it's first quarter of 2021. Yes. And that is the perfect, you have given us somewhere to go. That's what we want. We are going to, you see that mass organization that we're doing, we're going to be mass organizing registrations, registering to vote. When Lekki Toge turned into it's going to be a party at the registration center, because every last one of us, everybody who is, at the minute you turn 18, you are eligible to be a voter in this country, and you must go and get your card. So that there are obviously people who are paid by the current system. So we have to recognize that there are people who politicians activate during elections. 555K or bags of rice or whatever, whatever they use to make sure that this entire community of people. Now, you won't, because those people are used to that transactional politics, you'll never get all of them to cross over and do things better. But what we can do is stack the numbers now. All of us, let's go and increase the voting pool. Let's all have our card. Let's all show up. And that's one of the easiest ways to battle rigging. It's for everybody to show up. It's when people don't show up that they can take and just, stamp ballots for. But when there's enough people that show up and stay, because by law, in every polling unit, they must count the votes there and display the results of that election there. So all you have to do is make sure that you are represented in every polling unit, that you have people there that will stay. If it takes till the next day or 3 days to count all the votes, your people will be there until the very end to see those things posted. And so you can just have your own situation room where you are collecting all of this so that we know, we don't even need to wait for INEC. We know what the people in every place. And that's the kind of effort that I think that we have a chance now to organize towards. And you mentioned it in passing. I'll be honest with you, I don't know for sure if I want to run in 2023. I'm a very spiritual man. The last time I felt like God gave me the green light to go ahead and almost pushed me and gave me a burden to go ahead because I needed to, I guess, go and pave the way or whatever the case may be for people to know that this kind of thought process is even possible. So I would need to feel that green light from God again. I need to speak to my wife and get her permission. And based on what we went through in the last time, I have quite a bit of convincing to do before Mrs. W will permit me to do it again. But it's not about me. It's about us. And if there's somebody that is better suited to do the job, man, I will be first in line to stand behind that person and give them counsel and advice and support. Because it's not about me. It's not about my seat. It's about, for me, it was all about planting a seed, not winning a seat. And it wasn't about the next election. It's about the next generation, this generation, to say, we can do things better, guys. It's possible. We can dream like this. We can think like this. We can work together like this. And I'm so grateful now that I'm alive to see this generation of young people in our country standing together, speaking against oppression, speaking against injustice, pushing back and demanding better of our leaders. And we're going to continue to do this. We're going to continue to push ourselves, and we'll sit down together and decide. And I want, I don't know how many people are going to watch this. I pray everybody does, but I want young people to pay specific attention to the other seats, the local government chairman, the House of Assembly, the House of Representatives, the Senate. There you have a chance to just organize ourselves and put who we want across the country into those places. And 2023 is not a long time away. It's already, it's around the corner now. So this is the time for us to identify the people that we're going to be supporting, regardless of which party they are in. I don't even care. But let's have a movement that helps make those selections and supports getting the right people into office. We won't get every single seat that we want, but we should get enough to raise a standard against the corruption and the incompetency and the, just the decay that is our current political system. There are some good people in government now, and I don't want it to seem like everybody in government is good, because when you say government, you're really talking about a collection of a lot of different people. So there are one or two bright lights, Dr. Chikwe, and what he did for us, throughout this whole COVID period, if he wasn't there, I'm convinced that Nigeria would have lost more lives. So that's just one example of people, and there are even some young people that I personally like. I like Akin Oyebode, the Commissioner for Finance in Ekiti State. So there are pockets of people who are bright lights, who are trying to do the right thing, who are in a very tough system, and they're still trying to do their jobs, okay? But we now have to identify those people, support those people, and then find more people like that. There needs to be 1 million Dr. Chikwes in the different offices in the country, and that's the.
But like you said a reason for before you make any decision when it comes to your political career and the likes. But we've seen where now we're in a situation whereby it's alleged that the government is clamping down on those that were really vocal on the EndSARS protest, especially entertainers. I think Yabo Ojo came out to say ever since she said she's not campaigning for anybody, her life has been threatened. I've seen reports where DJ Switch, who we saw her Instagram live as well, at the point said her life was threatened. Mr. Macaroni as well has said his life was threatened and the likes. You've also been someone that has been very vocal during this period, as well as other times where protests were held. Was your life threatened, or just tell us what you've experienced during these times?
Well, I'll tell you this, my life, probably from the point of the campaign, I was receiving threats at that point, all through now. And I don't think that, I also don't really pay attention to things. I don't dedicate my energy or my mind space to things that, so if I don't know your number, I'm not going to answer your call for you to call me and be threatening me. And if you send me any kind of stupid message, I'm going to block you and keep moving. So, from the point of the campaign, I can tell you a lot of stories of threats, life-threatening situations and direct threats to my safety.
Share the one that scared Mrs. W the most.
No. Maybe another day. Maybe another day. I don't want that to become the headline. So, and I also think it's important that we don't let's not glorify certain things, because that's what, fear is a dangerous emotion, and it's human nature to want to gravitate towards that fear. Okay, so I don't want to glorify it, because I'd rather glorify faith. I would rather glorify the belief that, man, forget all this nonsense. We are going to win this fight. We're going to, we're going to turn this country around. I don't want to focus on that. I think it's important because that fear can now lead to some people, sitting back, and and that's the thing, is like, when these things are going on, it's usually somebody's family member that will be like, my son or my daughter, don't go out, or this is what, because people are afraid, but I think that we don't need fear right now. We need faith. We need faith and we need action. And that's why we released that song called Talk and Do. Permit me to shamelessly plug our new song, Talk and Do, featuring Tubaba, Timi Dakolo, Waje, produced by Mastercraft, also featuring Brookstone, the worship.
We're going to talk about it eventually, though.
Well, I'm already here, so let me just finish my plug. But
we're still going to talk about it. Yes.
Okay. Anyway, but that's what Talk and Do. The message of Talk and Do is like, we have to all go beyond the point of talking about things to doing something about it. And if we feed that fear, then less people are going to come forward. But guess what? If we all show up, then how many of us can they target? Really? Because we all got to show up, let's all show up.
So we're getting to the end of our discussion, Mr. Wellington. But now, we've spoken about everything, you understand? But let's talk about Lagos State, which is somewhere you're very familiar with. What do you think about what's going on with the judicial panel? I mean, judicial panels have been set up in various states in the country. But let's use Lagos State as a case study, as it may be. A lot of stories have come out to say where a federal minister had come to discover a camera. We've seen where the judicial panel had come to discover a shell casing rather, days after the place had been swept. It actually sparked a lot of discourse online, you understand? So with everything that has been playing, the aftermath, the judicial panel, with what you've read, what you've heard, what you've seen, do you still have the highest hopes about the judicial panel set in Lagos, using it as probably a benchmark for other states and the likes, looking at everything that's played?
So the reason that I have a small amount of faith in what the judicial panel can do is specifically because of the young people, the representation of young people on those panels. So one of the things that we said when we're agitating for 5 was that every state must have a judicial panel that has the power and the authority from their governors to investigate cases of police brutality, award compensation, and bring police or security agents who have been found guilty to justice. But when they started going about setting up, we now started insisting that they must have young people on those panels. And I remember when we first tried to speak about that online, a lot of young people actually came for me and said, "Oh, you are a paid agent of the government. You're trying to get them to stop the protests," and they started, raining insults on me and stoning me. When, in truth, I was fighting to say, guys, it's important that there are young people there, because those are the people that will communicate with us, that will be transparent, that we will be able to use them to know what is going on in the judicial panels. We'll be able to use them to hold the panels accountable, so that they cannot just do any kind of mago and say, well, we have investigated, it's fine, we're moving, And so I took a lot of abuse because I think people just generally didn't understand, what we were saying. But I think now people are starting to see that, how important that was. And in Lagos State, there's Renew and Temitope, who, there was, a lot of polls went out online, and eventually we ended up with those two because some of the people who people did vote for, like Fowles and FK, weren't able to take on those positions because of their time commitments elsewhere. And so eventually we ended up with those two people who I do have a lot of faith in and hope for, that they will be able to, because it's an incredibly tough job. Yeah. While we're on that topic, I do want to say something. What I've noticed recently, and I've tried, I tried to pick my battles on when to get involved in the conversations online, because I'm an easy target and I always end up getting dragged for my opinions. But I stand by the things that I believe in. So I always believe that the judicial panels were important and that young people needed to be on it, and young people needed to be involved in selecting who represented them on it. And I think we're seeing some benefits of that now, because we can at least see what is going on in the Lagos judicial panels. We can see things are being streamed live. We're involved in that process. Now, I know the next thing that has been some level of controversy about is whether the judicial panel should be paid. And I believe very strongly that they should, because we're talking about thousands of hours of work every week. These young people, so how are they supposed to feed themselves? How are they supposed to live? Are they supposed to be, and I think that they're doing a service, and every laborer deserves wages for their service. So I think that's the other thing, is that we as a generation, we need to educate ourselves to know that it's not every time that is, hey, corruption, why are the young people getting paid? You're asking them to dedicate their lives and thousands upon thousands of hours over the next few months or even years, possibly, to this kind of work. And you think that they should just do it for free? How are they going to pay their rent? How are they going to put food in their store? How are they going to pay for their school fees or whatever it is that they're doing? So I think as young people, we need to take a moment to understand what is going on, and then so that we're not just fighting anything and everything all the time. And just because I understand that there's a high level of trust deficit in the country, in our generation. But that's why I think it's very, very important that we educate ourselves about it. Now, to bring this judicial panel story to a close, here's the thing. I think it might have been Punch or Pulse. I don't remember. It might have been Punch, but there was an article that I read that said, hey, getting awarded a judgment is not the end of the line, right? And they outlined multiple cases where a person sued the police or whatever security force. A judge sat there, heard the case, the whole trial went on, and the person was awarded damages. And 5, 10, 12, 15 years later, the person has not seen a dime. And so this now goes back to the governors, right? I think now is the time for our governors to rise up and ensure that they're doing the right thing. So it's funny, we set up the judicial panels to investigate things that happen, especially things that happen during the protest. But a lot of the cases that we're seeing in Lagos, there's a man who years ago he's been paralyzed because he was assaulted by SARS. And he got a judgment against, we're seeing cases from years past of people who have been, their case has been caught up in courts forever. And, maybe they've even been awarded a judgment, but they will never see a dime from it. And the way that the country is set up, the police or the military or whichever erring security agency it is, can just ignore the court order and just, okay, you got your award in court, well, oh well. And that's what we're seeing. So I think this is the time for our governors to really rise up. You are the leader of the states, okay? You are the one in charge of everything that happens in the state. Now is the time for you to make sure that if something is awarded via the judicial panel or somebody has a case in court where a court has seen it through and awarded the person damages, then those damages must be paid, that compensation, because we're talking about people who've lost lives, who've lost their sources of income, their livelihoods, people whose lives have been forever ruined by the corruption in our police force and in our military. So you can't compensate for loss of life, okay? But you can give the family something to live on and something to live for and something to keep going with. And I think that responsibility falls squarely on the shoulders of our governors to ensure that the cases that are being tried in the judicial panel, whatever comes out of it, where there's meant to be compensation, let people be compensated. Where there's meant to be justice, get the Attorney General of the state and of the country to do the right thing and to bring, because that's all young people. Man, this entire thing is about saying we just want to see action. Don't tell us the press release. Just show us the people that are being the officers that are being prosecuted and charged. Show us the families that are being just show us the actions. And I think that will go a long way to bringing us towards a resolution, at least on this police brutality matter, so that we see that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and then we can start to, take our attention towards other things. And I think for politicians that are out there, for people whose responsibility it is for them to serve the people, they need to be very careful, because now you're looking at a whole nation of young people who are awake now and are paying attention. So they're seeing the way that you behave. So maybe you think you can get away with shutting them up now, but your power is transient too. You're not going to be there for the rest of your life. Elections are coming again. And I think it is the people who are out there standing with the people, on behalf of the people, fighting for the people, doing the right thing, that will win our confidence to go on and continue. But if you think that you can just muzzle your young people up or shut them up or clamp down on them or make their lives difficult by seizing their passport or freezing their bank account, no problem. It's only for a while, and history will tell. And that's the thing about history. Now people in leadership in the country need to think about their legacy. What story? Because you can paint lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. So whatever you think you are doing now, man, you got a generation that is awake and more connected than ever and more powerful than ever through their phones and through the power of the stories that they're able to tell and the various places they can tell those stories that don't need your approval. So now's the time for people in leadership to just do the right thing. Just make the right decision. Just be accountable. Just be transparent. Just be a person, a leader of actions, not a leader of mere words. And if you do that, you'll be fine.
Thank you so much, so very much, Mr. Wellington Olubankole.
Yes,
for
of
your
course.
time on this segment of Punch Live interview session. We thank you for your words, your opinion, and everything. Uh, Stay safe and stay blessed. And to our viewers, also thank you for tuning in and for commenting. We are really grateful. I am Ademola Ronilua. Have a blessed day.
God
Enjoy.
bless, bro. Cheers.